Hello, grandkids. You know, your grandma and I sure enjoyed our time with you in London. There's so much to see and to do in London, and with just a few days, it's impossible to see it all or take it all in. And it's also impossible to comprehend all the history that's behind it. So, Tyler and Bentley, you went to Norway and Iceland. Would you like to know how one branch of our family made it from Norway and Iceland to England, and from there to the USA? Luke, I know you saw the two statues in front of the Parliament, one of Oliver Cromwell, a Puritan, and the other of Richard the Lion-Hearted. Maybe the rest of you all also saw that. Did you know our ancestors have connection to both of them? I think all of you went to the British Museum. Did you know that one of our ancestors wrote a book, a famous book, and that the original manuscript is stored in the British Museum? Some of you may have been to St. Paul's Cathedral. The same ancestor who wrote that book that's in the British Museum also preached a famous sermon at that cathedral. So what else is in our family tree? Well, how about a shoemaker for Queen Elizabeth and King James? How about two brothers who fought against each other in the Civil War? How about the first printer in the American colonies? Maybe an Indian trader? A captain in the French and American War? Grape growers in France? Farmers in Russia who fled to the U.S. to save their lives? Even Daniel Boone. There were knights, ladies, tax collectors, preachers, maybe even a cousin to the Queen. I'm working on that last one. Are you interested in all this? In the next few weeks, I'm going to do several videos for you on Grandma and Grandpa's family tree as I put together all the pieces. So, grab some popcorn, because in this first one, we're going to go back as far in time as we can. To take a line from Buzz Lightyear, we're going to go to England and beyond. Okay, I can hear Isaac right now saying, "Mama, why is Grandpa wearing that funny hat?" It's because our story starts with the Vikings in the 700s and the 800s. Now, you all know that they were great sailors. Leif Erikson came to North America hundreds of years before Columbus. They were also raiders, sort of the pirates of the early seas. Now, you may have seen the pictures of Vikings in hats with horns, but they didn't really wear those. Most Viking hats were simple, round metal helmets. They used fur, like I'm wearing, or wool for padding. Then they would cover it up with an iron cap, kind of like a football helmet. So, where are the Vikings from? Well, just where you guys sailed last year, Tyler and Bentley. They were from Norway and Iceland. In other words, they were the men from the north. In French, the words Northmen translate as Normans. Some of our earliest family members that we can trace were Normans. Who knows, Tyler and Bentley, maybe your ancestors came from Iceland. Anyway, the Normans loved to be pirates, and they raided the coastal areas on the west of France. Now, after this happened several times, the Viking king and the French king made a deal. The French king said, "You stop raiding my country, and I'll give you a piece of it. I'll give you land, and we can live together in peace." So the Vikings moved in, and they intermarried with the French folk in the area. So what would you call, if you were in France, what would you call a place where the Normans live? You would call it Normandy. Yes, the same places where the beaches, the Allies came aboard the beaches in World War II on D-Day. So what would you call the ruler of this section of land? Well, he would be the Duke of Normandy. The most famous Duke of Normandy is William I, known as William the Conqueror. So, it's right here that our family enters the scene with William the Conqueror in the year 1066. Okay, so the Normans lived in France and were by all accounts more advanced than the Anglo-Saxons who lived in England. So, England gets attacked by the Danes, another group of Vikings. William came to the aid of his distant cousin, who was the King of England at the time. So when he saved the king, as payback, the King of England promised that William would be the King of England after him. but then the King of England backed out on the deal. When he died 15 years later, the king handed England over to an Englishman named Harold. So here's where William the Conqueror got his name. He said, "Hey, I'm supposed to be king of the country, not Harold." So he attacked Harold's army. They fought for the right to be king. It was a one-day battle, the most famous ever fought on British soil, because it was the last time that Britain was conquered by an outside power. It's called the Battle of Hastings. It happened on October 14th, 1066. And that following Christmas Day, William the Conqueror was crowned the King of England. Now, why is that a big deal? Because every single king and queen of England since that time is a descendant of William the Conqueror. By the way, where was he crowned? Westminster Abbey. Yes, the same Westminster Abbey that we all saw when we were in London. It's been there for more than 1,000 years. Okay, I can hear some of you saying, this is just history class. Where's he going to get to our family? Well, right now. The reason the war was so short, that lasted just one day, was that Harold was killed and all of his army panicked. A massive number of them died. So when the battle was all over, some folks found the body of Harold and they brought it to the conqueror, and he had to decide what to do with it. Harold's mother actually wanted to buy it. She offered to pay his weight in gold to buy it. But he instead entrusted it to one of his important soldiers and told him to bury it near the sea. This soldier he gave it to was William Mallet. I believe him to be your 27th great-grandfather. Okay, so that means the word grandfather with 27 greats in front of it. Great, whatever, grandfather. Yes, that was a really long time ago. And it's quite extraordinary to be able to follow a family line that far. So, now, what do you do if you just took over a country that doesn't want you as king, but treats you like a foreign invader? Well, what you do is you take all the soldiers that you trust and you make them barons, and you spread them out over the country. Well, Mallet was one of those. So what he did is he set up the Mallets. They were given land all over the country, but they wound up building a castle in a place called Enmore, which they were barons for 100 years. So that's why we were able to trace all of this information, is because people write down all the things that barons do, and they write down who the parents were and who the kids were and how long they lived and all those things. And so we have this documented all the way back. So let's finish the story of William Mallet. After the Battle of Hastings, William was sent to a town called York, where he was assigned a group of knights. Okay, New York, named after York. Okay, so he was assigned a group of knights, and he was told to maintain the security of the area. It didn't go well. About 2 years later, Danish raiders came. The king heard that they were coming, and he asked William if he needed help to hold the fort. William said, "Nah, we got this. We could hold them off for a year." That was not a good move. What William may not have planned is the fact that all the people in the countryside would rather join the Danes than the Normans. So when the Danes landed their ship, all the country folk joined them, and together they marched on the city of York. Scooby-Doo would say, "Ruh-roh." Now in those days, the easiest way to attack a castle surrounded by a moat was to tear down the houses of the town nearby and dump them in the moat, creating a land bridge so that you could get to the castle. So knowing that, the Normans, seeing this group coming, burned down the town before they got there. So they were trying to eliminate all of the wood, all of the material to fill the moat. But it didn't work. The castle fell anyway. So the whole town of York was destroyed, partly by friendly fire and partly by the enemy. So most of the Normans were killed. William Mallet was taken off as a prisoner, died, we believe, shortly later. The moral of the story: don't be so cocky to think you can't use a little help. But, so maybe that's come down through our family a long ways. So now let me get to what I promised about our family. The statue of Richard the Lionheart. So who's Richard? He is the great-great-grandson of William the Conqueror. So he is considered one of the great kings of England, and he led one of the crusades. There were several crusades against the Muslim forces in the Holy Land in Israel. So when he recruited an army to go with him, who would he get to go with him? He would get all those nobles who had fought valiantly for his great-great-grandfather. So the great-great-grandson of William Mallet. Now this is unoriginal names. His name is also William Mallet. So William, the great-great-grandson of William, okay? So there's 14 generations of Mallets in our family tree. All sorts of interesting things happened to them. At least 2 of them were accused of plotting against the king. One had to change his name and leave the country, but those are stories for another time. Today I'm going to leave you with one final story. When King Richard died, his brother John took over the throne. He was an oppressive king, and the one who's portrayed as the evil king in the Robin Hood stories. 25 barons finally banded together and threatened to remove him as king unless he agreed to a set of rules that they set down. They signed this document, called the Magna Carta, and he signed it. For the first time, a king was forced to agree that he couldn't do whatever he wanted, but would be subject to written law. Not only that, but they set up a group of elected officials who would ensure that he would abide by what he wrote because they didn't trust him. This is the basis for what we have in the United States now as the rule of law and the checks and balances that come from our 3 balances of government, because you can't always trust one branch to do right. So, okay, was that fun? I got lots more, but enough for now. Next time we'll crank up the time machine and go back to London and talk about a couple more of your family who shaped history and what happened to them once they landed in the USA. So, thanks family, love you all. Bye for now.